Good morning and welcome. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Laurie Steiner. I, along with Cynthia and Mary, who could not be here today, are your learning support co-chairs with the PTA. And we have brought to you today this wonderful speaker. Before we get started, a few bits of administrivia. If you are seeking language translation, whether to Chinese or honestly, I think any world language that I can think of, we do have a QR code to an AI translation app that the school is piloting with us today. So we are very excited to be the first to use it on campus. There were copies of this QR posted at the entrance. If you do need a copy in your seat, we will pass this around. Just raise your hand and we'll make sure it gets to you, if you understood me. If you have brought in coffee or other beverages, please be mindful. This is typically a beverage and food-free space, so just be mindful not to spill. And, take care of our wonderful, nearly brand new West Theater. So it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Senior Clinical Psychologist at Promises Healthcare, Ms. Sukfern Mak. Sukfern has been practicing since 2014 and provides psychotherapy and assessments for children and adolescents. She has extensive experience supporting young people through challenges such as anxiety, depression, eating disorder, and school-related stress. She also works closely with families to build lasting support. She holds a master's in clinical psychology from Curtin University, is a full member of the Singapore Psychological Society, and brings both clinical experience and deep passion for helping children thrive. As a parent of 4 children myself, all of which need assistance in thriving on a daily basis, I can personally attest to her level of expertise. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Ms. Sukfern Mak.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Good. Okay. So thanks for being here today. I'm Sukfern, as Laurie said. I'm a clinical psychologist. Okay, big privilege to be able to partner with SAS for this very, very important conversation that we're going to have today. Okay, good. Okay, so my goal today is to provide a clinical framework to help you feel more confident and empowered in supporting your child's well-being. And I want to start by grounding our conversation today in the values that you already hold dear as a community. Okay, so my work as a clinician aligns very well with the identity-affirming vision your campus leaders have shared with you. Okay, so every child known, every student belongs, and every learner thrives. The core of my message today is about truly knowing and seeing our children so that they feel that they belong, which is so important that every student at SAS should feel valued, cared for, and included, which is the values that your school and your board has provided in your DEI commitment. Okay. So our conversation today is full of that spirit of commitment. So with that shared foundation, we're going to focus on one central idea, that you are the expert on your child. Okay, so my role here is to help you tune into any persistent change from that baseline. Okay. Okay, no, wait. No. Sorry, technical issues. There you go. Okay. So our plan for the next 40 minutes, okay, or more, depends. Okay, we're going to look at the big picture of well-being first. Okay. There are Chinese translations, as well as I could have done it, for about the first half of the presentation, but the next bit is all in English. Okay. Then we're going to go into the specific kind of hidden signs of distress across the different age groups. And then finally, we'll build like a practical toolkit of strategies that you can use today. But I guess before I start, I just kind of want to get a feel of the room. Are there any parents with kids under 7? Okay, yep. Middle elementary to middle school. Okay, that's the bunch of it. Okay, high school, that's everyone else. Okay, so generally in middle school. Okay, so I've read the questions that you guys have submitted beforehand. Okay, so while the slides will provide a core framework, I will address some of your specific questions directly throughout our time together, so you can listen out for those. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so this is the first part. Okay. So from a clinical perspective, mental health is a lot like physical health. It's on a spectrum, it's on a continuum. Okay, so we all have days where we're thriving, we have days where we're just surviving, and then there's days where we're struggling. Okay, so the goal is not constant happiness. Okay, it's building the resilience to be able to navigate and be able to cope with this entire spectrum. So how do we know that a bad day is becoming something more? Okay, so we come back to this golden rule that I have. Okay, look for persistent change from your child's baseline. Okay, so this golden rule is the key to answering a question that many of you had. Okay, so how do we know when to get help? Was one of the questions. Right, it's not about a single bad day. Okay, it's about a pattern of change. Okay, this is also the lens we use for another good question that we got. Okay, how do we distinguish an energetic child from potential ADHD? So an energetic child can still regulate for a task in school, in play. But a persistent struggle with focus across many settings, so in the classroom, at home, in sports, that impairs their life is a change from a neurotypical baseline and a signal to consult a professional. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about anxiety. It's a normal protective emotion that all of us have. Okay, we've evolved to have it. So now when it becomes a clinical concern is when the brain's threat alarm, so the alarm system in the brain gets stuck in that on position. So it's perpetually on. It's not supposed to be always on. Okay, so when there's no real danger, it's not supposed to be on. Okay, now when someone is anxious, that is always on because it puts that person on alert all the time. Okay, so you can imagine that this state of high alert, okay, consumes a lot of energy in our brain. Okay, so I call it cognitive thief. Cognitive is a term that we use for the brain. Okay, now why is it a cognitive thief? Because it steals the resources that we need for our kids, okay, like focus, memory, and creativity. Okay, so these are the things that your kids need to learn to thrive in school. Okay, they need to have it. Okay, anxiety doesn't always look like worry. Okay, in our clinical practice, we often see it in 3 ways. Okay, although how as parents we interpret them can be cultural. Okay, the first is the very classic, the internalizing, we call it the worrier, the classic worrier. Okay, so this is the one where, they're overthinking, they're frowning a lot, they tell you lots and lots of things, they seek a lot of reassurance. Mom, is this okay? Daddy, is this okay? Am I doing right? Is this all right? Okay, the second one, okay, is the warrior, I call it a warrior, the externalizing ones. So this one looks like irritability, it looks like anger, it looks like defiance. Okay, now in many cultures, this is seen as a disciplinary or behavioral issue, and then it needs a firmer hand. Okay, but clinically, we see it as a cry for help. Okay, so this is usually a sign of the child's nervous system being really overwhelmed, that they can't handle it anymore, so they lash out. Okay, now the third one is what we call somatizing. Somatizing. Okay, so this is, the anxiety happens in the body. It shows up as physical symptoms. Okay, so for many, many children, especially in cultures where it's not so common to speak openly about emotions, okay, the body becomes the voice of the stress. Okay, these physical symptoms like tummy aches, headaches, chest pain, that sort of thing, are a very real sign of emotional distress. Okay, now how do we know when to act? And what are these signs that are quite hidden? We don't really see them. Yeah, okay. So let's start with our youngest learners, okay? Preschool to about first grade, so about 3 to 7 years old. Okay, for this age group, distress usually shows up in behavior. Okay, because they don't have the words to explain the big feelings that they have. Okay, so the most significant sign that we want to look out for is regression, behavioral regression. Okay, so let's talk about our reluctant kindergartner. Okay, so for parents, for everyone who have had kids in preschool, you know, a child who was typically happy, independent, kind of walking into school at drop-off in the morning, and then suddenly becomes clingy, is crying, don't want to let go of your leg or your hand, okay? Or a child who has already been potty trained or toilet trained for about a year, and then suddenly starts having accidents again, okay? Or they might complain of a tummy ache when there's no cause, you know, you've brought them to the doctors, and the doctor said, oh, you know, there's nothing wrong. Okay, now when you see a cluster of these signs, okay, so intense separation anxiety, physical complaints, and then more and more frequent meltdowns, for example, okay, this persists for more than a week or two, okay, it's what we call a yellow light. Okay, so throughout this presentation, I'll kind of classify symptoms like green light, yellow light, red light. Okay, now what does yellow light mean? It's a clear signal, okay, that their world feels so very overwhelming, okay, and their coping skills are really, really stretched. Okay, now the important first step that we do in this case would be to partner with the teachers in school, okay, kind of find out what's going on, open a line of communication to share what you're noticing at home, and then check in with them, oh, you know, is this happening in the classroom as well, right? Because this is what's happening at home, you know, what have you noticed that is happening in the classroom as well? Okay, so early collaboration is key. Oh, we have a little one as well. Okay. Okay. All right. So for elementary school students, okay, oftentimes the body is the one that speaks the loudest. Okay, think of the Sunday night stomach ache or the end of holiday tummy ache. Okay, a child who's happy all weekend, all throughout summer, and then suddenly, just before school starts, feels sick. Okay, tummy aches, headaches, chest pains. I've seen a persistent cough, that's quite rare, on school mornings. Okay, so this is quite a classic sign. So when you see these red flags persisting, yellow light. Okay, so this is again a signal that their coping skills are overwhelmed. Okay, so that's the time to collaborate with teachers in school. Okay, so reach out to the school counselor. I know you guys have a wonderful team here in SAS, or your child's teacher to share what's happening. Okay, now, I do have to put a bit of a caveat. You do need to bring your child to the doctor to kind of make sure that there's nothing physical going on before considering that this might be something psychological or emotional going on. Okay? Because sometimes things like chest pains, they can be very, very concerning because we don't know. Because if it's something really physical, we don't want to miss that out as well. Okay? Okay. Now, when we move to middle school, okay, anxiety often shifts from being in the body to avoidance. Okay, so let's talk about a child who's this disruptive perfectionist. Okay, so this is a diligent student. Okay, always does their work, no problems, hands in their homework. Suddenly starts procrastinating, okay, on a big project, or acting out. I don't want to do this. I'm going to leave this. It's okay. I've got time. You know, next week it's due. It's okay. I'll do it next week. Okay, this is not laziness. Okay, it's often a manifestation of this paralyzing fear of failure. Okay, because things have gone well for them in elementary school, things are pretty easy, and then they get to middle school, learning gets a little bit tougher, more subjects, and then they kind of find that it's a little bit difficult to cope. Okay, so again, this is a yellow light. Okay, persistent avoidance, academic avoidance, and high irritability. okay, means the anxiety is now affecting the functioning. Okay, so again, this might warrant a direct conversation with the school support team, okay, to formulate a bit of a collaborative plan on how this middle schooler can be better supported in class. Now, on this slide, we see signs like social withdrawal, sensitivity. Okay, now this is the perfect place to address the question about the 11-year-old who bites their nails, okay, or pulls their hair. Okay, nail biting is a classic physical sign of anxiety. Okay, it's the body trying to release nervous energy. Okay, sometimes what we do, we'll do this, sometimes we're a little bit nervous as well. Okay, kids, they may bite their nails, or flexible ones, they'll bite their toenails. Okay, I don't know how they do it, but they can. Okay, they are more flexible than we are. Okay, so usually this strategy, okay, the strategy is not to punish the behavior. Okay, it's not like, putting chili on their nails and all that. That's the old school way, right? To get them to stop. Okay, but to get really curious about what's going on underneath. Okay, sometimes they might need professional help. Okay, I used to have a kid who I think she pulled so much of her hair that she only had like a little spot here, right? So it was really hard because then she's in like a girls' school, so everyone has long hair and everything, so she had to wear like a cap to go to school. And she was 11 as well. Okay, now Okay, now when we get to high school, okay, for high schoolers feeling overwhelmed, okay, anxiety looks a little bit like a desperate quest for control. Okay, everything. Okay, they start to rigidly control the things that they can or they think they can. Okay, food, exercise, schedules, screen time. Okay, now these behaviors, especially the rigid food control, okay, or any signs of self-harm, okay, or a complete loss or a huge loss of interest in life, in studies, hanging out with friends, that sort of thing, okay, it's not a phase. Okay, from a clinical standpoint, we see this as a red light. Okay, so these are the signs of a significant mental health crisis, okay, that we would like to see immediate action and very likely professional intervention as well. Okay, so your first step when you do see this would be to ensure safety and seek an urgent assessment with the mental health team or an external mental health provider. Now, this brings us to a crucial topic. Okay, I want to frame this using the powerful theme from your PTA's Neurodiversity Week. Okay, celebrating minds of all kinds. Okay, the theme is a perfect lens for understanding two very key issues. Okay, first is what we call masking. For very, very bright students, okay, or many bright students, especially those with neurodivergent minds, okay, learn to camouflage their challenges. Okay, now the key sign is what we call this after-school collapse. Okay, so it's this meltdown at home or just this complete, you might see them lying on the floor, they're totally exhausted. Okay, because they've put so much effort in masking in school that they're just completely flat out when they get home. Okay, because, the school hours are quite long. I was told it's like 8 to 3. Okay, so it's about a quarter of a day. Okay, so usually, this is not a behavioral problem. It's usually a sign that their batteries are just flat. Okay? Now, neurodiverse minds like high-functioning ADHD or autism, especially in girls, okay, they mask, and they mask a lot. Okay, they learn from a really young age that they are different from others. Okay, and they learn how to mask. Because especially for girls, the social part is really big. So they learn how to fit in. Okay, so they learn to just hide their problems and try to do what other people are doing, but this is really, really exhausting for them. Okay, so usually it shows up in our clinic as anxiety or depression. Okay, so it's very important for us as clinicians to seek an assessment for them if we do suspect neurodiversity, because it helps them understand themselves, okay, as adolescents in the framework of their identity. Because adolescence is a time where a person's identity is being formed, right? Now, the second one is screen time. Okay, so this is very contentious. Okay, the clinical question is not whether or not they use screens or if they use screens, but why they use the screens. Okay, because we use it in school, right, to teach our kids. A lot of lessons nowadays can be online. During COVID, everyone had to do like online learning. Okay, so with screens, are our children using them to connect with others? Okay, and create things? Okay, so if they're collaborating on a project, okay? That's okay. Or are they using it to numb their feelings, okay? To escape or to avoid something, okay? Now the second one is a red flag, okay? It's not about no screen time. Not possible nowadays because it's very, very digital. I mean, even all of us are using screens as well. Okay, it's whether they use it as their only means of connection or escaping, okay, with others rather than physically hang out with their friends or playing sports or being with the family. Okay, now, as we look at these complex topics, I want to spend a moment, okay, that on a theme that came up in a lot of your questions, okay, technology and screen time. Okay, now the slide here asks us to shift our thinking from if to why. Okay, so are they using screens to connect or are they using screens to numb? So this is something it's just a question that you can ask yourself. So when you see your child spending a long time on screens, okay, so the deductive question you would ask yourself is, which bucket feels so empty that numbing out is the best option right now, okay? So I'll talk about the buckets in a minute. Okay, so let's talk about some strategies. Okay, so how can we start these conversations? Okay, sometimes, especially with teenagers, they don't like to talk. Okay, so when you ask them how's school, okay. Everything okay in class? Okay. How's your friends? Okay. Any homework? So they go from talking a lot in elementary school, middle school to monosyllabic. Okay, so that's hard for us because we want to know what's going on in their lives. Okay, so with teachers, just be like a collaborative observer. Okay, now with your child, we don't interrogate. Okay, now a simple but powerful tip. Okay, don't ask why. Okay, use how come. Okay, I don't know why, but it works. Okay, because why feels very accusatory. Okay, so they put the wall up. Okay, why is it like that? Why do you do this? How come? No, what did you do? Okay? So, but how come it's like this? The message is actually the same, but it's a little bit more gentle, right? So our teenagers respond to it. We use this clinically as well. We don't actually use why. We use how come, and teenagers start talking to us. Okay, so this is your magic word, okay? All right? And try talking side by side, like in the car or on a walk or during an activity, because it's less confrontational. Okay? So usually in clinic, what we do is, if I'm sitting here, and then I'll say, okay, pull up a chair, okay? Then the kid usually will pull up a chair here. And I'll go, oh, no, just sit next to me, okay? I don't want to feel like I'm interviewing you, because I'm not, okay? Okay. Now, for the toolkit, this is something that's in your handout, okay? In child psychology, okay, we know that misbehavior is almost always a signal of unmet need, okay? So there's many ways to think about it. Okay, but one of the most practical metaphors I've come across is this whole idea of buckets. Okay, it's based on this single premise that misbehavior is almost always a sign of an unmet need, okay, emotional or physical. Okay, now the power and connection buckets come from a local parenting educator. Okay, so Miss Jacinth Liu from Our Little Playness. You can find her on Instagram. Okay, when I attended her course. So this appeared to be an extension of the emotional cup theory in psychology. Okay, when I taught my son this, he added the food and the water buckets somehow, okay, and then I added the energy bucket. So there's 5. Okay, it suits him fine for now because he's still little. He's turning 5. Now, this is a crucial point on how to use this. For our younger children, especially those under 7, okay, think of it as a diagnostic tool for you as the parent. You kind of, okay, which one is it? Which one is it? Okay? So it's your secret lens to understand their world. Some kids might grasp it really early, okay? But for most, they don't have the abstract thinking yet to say, oh, mom or dad, my connection bucket's empty, okay? They will just sit next to you, mommy, daddy, 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 and then you're doing something, right? Daddy, mommy, and then you kind of get really frustrated because, what they try to say, they're not saying anything, they're just poking you, right? Then you get annoyed, okay? But then for them, they will actually just seek connection, okay? But you can observe their behavior. You can observe their meltdown, for example, and then think, oh, we've been so busy, we haven't had our one-on-one time, okay? So his connection bucket's probably empty, okay? So the real magic for this age group is how it actually shifts our perspective, okay, from reacting to a naughty child to responding to a child with an unmet need. Now, as the children get older, 8 and above, okay, we can start using that language with them. Actually, when they're younger, we can actually use it with them, but we don't ask them, we just reflect it back to them. But when they're older, you can actually ask them, okay, which of your buckets need filling right now? Which of your buckets are empty? Okay, so it can become a very powerful tool for them to understand themselves and advocate for themselves as well, because with a system of 5, it's quite easy to remember. They can tell you, oh, my power bucket's empty. That's why I'm resisting, like, eating broccoli for dinner, because I want the carrots, something like that. Okay, so with that in mind, when your child is acting out, okay, instead of reacting, because, let's face it, we all will, okay? They drive us up the wall sometimes, because our buckets are also depleted, right? So our capacity is less. Okay, get curious, okay? So my son uses this very freely, okay, and he adds buckets. Like this morning, I had to get here pretty early, so I couldn't drop him off at school. Okay, so before I left, he went, "Mommy, I need you." Okay, so okay. Then he came and hugged me, and he was like, "My kissing bucket's empty." Oh, okay. So, lots of kisses. He's like, okay, full already. And then after he continued hugging me, so I'm like, what's going on? And he goes, "Connection bucket." Oh, okay. So just cuddles. Then after he just pushed my arms wide open and he ran off. Okay, full already. So I'm like, okay, bye. Then I left. And I came here early. Okay, so with that in mind, ask yourselves, okay, for your child, the last time their behaviors became difficult, okay, or became challenging, which of their 5 core buckets might be empty or need filling, okay? Now, we don't have to keep all the buckets at 100%. That's not possible, okay? We just need to keep them like about 80%, 70% full generally. Then it will be okay. Okay. Let's focus on the 2 most important emotional buckets, okay? Now, to fill the power bucket, offer choices, okay? Now, the need for autonomy, can sometimes create tension, okay, with cultural values of respecting elders. Okay, so in a lot of Asian cultures, especially those of us who grew up in very traditional households, we are always taught not to question the elders. So it's like, do as I say, kind of thing, right? Now, the goal for this is not to give up your authority as a parent, okay? So you are still in charge. Okay, but to give your child controlled autonomy. So it makes them seem like they are in charge, but actually you're still in charge, okay, in age-appropriate areas. Okay, so this helps them build their decision-making skills, okay, and reduces power struggles. Okay, for example, small meaningful choices. Do you want to wear the red shirt today or the blue shirt today? Or do you want peas or carrots with dinner or broccoli? Okay, so assign them a helper role, little kids like that. Okay, let them be in charge of something small, like setting the table, feeding the pet, or keeping their toys, or just putting the napkins on the table, or the cutlery on the table. Okay, or carrying like a grocery item. They like that, right? But something non-fragile. Okay, so during play, okay, this is their time for unstructured play, right? Resist the urge to direct them. Oh no, you're supposed to play it this way. You play it this way, but then they kind of want to do it the other way. So they want to fill the power bucket that way, right? So just let them. Right? Let them make the rules, let them be the expert. And sometimes they do surprise us. Their ideas are quite different from adults. Okay, now to fill the connection bucket, okay, I would like for us all to master what we call validation. Okay, now I want to pause here, okay, because for many of us, this feels very different from how we were raised. Okay, validation is not about being permissive or condoning that behavior. Okay, it's a tool that we use to signal that it's safe for our children to come to us and that they can trust us, okay, which then allows you to guide your child more effectively afterwards. Okay, because validation is about sending the message to your child that you understand what they're going through, they understand that they're having a hard time, and that you're there to help support them through it. Okay, it doesn't mean you agree with the behavior. Okay, I'll talk about validation a little bit more on the next slide. Okay, but to fill the connection bucket, okay, we can do things like special time, one-on-one time with them, 10 minutes, or even 5 minutes, 15 minutes of 100% focused time with each child. Okay, just allow them to be there and just enjoy being with them. Okay, and they love that. Okay, so no phones, no distractions. Okay, so if you have multiple children, then it might be 10 minutes with the first child, 10 minutes with the second child, 10 minutes with the third child, and then they can kind of take turns, who's first, who's second, who's third. Okay? Now, when we talk about validation, okay, kneel down to the simple things like kneeling down to the level, because they're shorter still, a lot of them. Okay? So when we get down to the level, we don't seem so intimidating to them. Okay? So they know that, oh, mom and dad are listening to us. I don't know if you guys have seen videos of, what's her name? The Princess of Wales, Catherine Middleton. Okay, when she speaks to her children, she almost always naturally, she kneels down to speak to them. Okay? Like that. Okay? So acknowledge their feelings, even though it doesn't seem logical to you. Okay? Like, oh, you're so mad that your towel fell down. Okay? Or something that seems very trivial to us, like, why are they even melting down about this, right? Like, oh, you're so angry that the carrot rolled over to your rice. Okay? Because sometimes that happens, right? Or the sauce touched the meat. Okay? Some kids don't like that. Okay, but to us it's like, it's okay, you eat it, it goes into your tummy anyway, it's all mixed. Okay, but not for them. Okay, non-verbal communication. Okay, things like a quick hug or a high five or a fist bump. Okay, or just like a wave or wink, when you walk across the room. Okay, tells them that, oh, you're thinking about them. Okay. Let's look at validation. Okay, this is your strongest connection tool. Okay, now we talked about the 5 buckets. Now, the single most powerful way to fill the connection bucket is through this thing called validation. Okay, now, this concept for many of us, okay, because it's very different from how we're raised, different from how I was raised as well, it feels very unnatural at first, okay, but it's a superpower. Okay, so what is it? So validation is simply being a mirror for your child's emotion. Okay, it's about reflecting their feeling back to them that you see it, you get it. Okay, it's not about agreeing with them. Okay, it's not about saying that their feeling is right and is not condoning the bad behavior. Okay, it's simply acknowledging that from their perspective, the feeling is valid. Okay, now, one of the mistakes we make as loving parents is sometimes we rush to solve the problem too quickly. Okay, or we try to talk our kids out of the feelings because that's how we were raised. Okay, we'll say things like, oh, don't be sad, it's just a game. Okay, or, oh, there's no reason to be angry, get over it. Okay, I'm sure a lot of us heard this growing up. Okay, but we do this with the best of intentions. But what the child actually hears is that, oh, my feeling is wrong. Okay, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Okay, so validation does the opposite. It sends the message that I see you, I get that your feeling is intense, your feeling does make sense for what happened. Okay, so the magic formula is, okay, you feel the feeling because the reason. Okay, so let me give you 2 examples. Okay, 5-year-old having a meltdown because their cookie broke in half. Okay, so invalidating response will be, oh, it's just a cookie, stop crying, we'll get another one. Or look, you have 2 cookies. Okay, I've done that before. Didn't work. A validating response using that formula, okay, is, oh wow, you feel so sad, you're so disappointed because you wanted the whole cookie and it broke. Okay, so that's it. Then you're just sitting with them for that moment, okay, and then watch, right? How amazing, how quickly the storm will pass when the child feels like, oh, mom and dad hurt me, okay? Now the second scenario will be your teenager coming home. They're really angry about a teacher, okay? Problem-solving response or an invalidating response will be, oh, what did you do? Did you study hard enough? Oh, you shouldn't let it get to you, it's just a test, okay? Validating one, using this validation would be, oh, that sounds incredibly frustrating. Okay, you're really angry because you feel like your teacher didn't treat you fairly. Okay, or they graded you unfairly during the test. Okay, notice you're not agreeing that the teacher is bad because your kid's going to tell you, oh, I hate this teacher, I don't want them anymore, no change class, whatever it is. Okay, you're agreeing that from your child's perspective, okay, this is how it feels. It feels very unfair. Okay, by doing this, you move from being their adversary to their ally. Because grown-ups, parents are grown-ups, teachers are also grown-ups. So sometimes our kids will lump us all together. Okay, so they'll think, oh, you're with the teachers, you're not going to side with me. Okay, so only after they feel heard, then we can problem solve together. Okay, so this is very important, especially for teenagers. Because a lot of the time, they don't want us to problem solve for them. They want us to just listen. Okay, but when we jump too quickly into problem solving, because that's what we're used to as parents of younger kids, but now they're older, okay, we are used to problem solving because usually when our kids come to us, they got a problem, they need help, something like that. Okay, but when they're a bit older, it shifts. They want us to listen to them rather than solve the problem for them. So sometimes I'll tell parents, okay, when your teenager especially comes to you with a problem, okay, usually the first question I'll ask parents to ask their kids is, okay, do you need me to listen to you or do you need help with something? Because that kind of gives you that framework, oh, do I need to listen or do I need to kind of go into problem solving mode, right? Okay, so this validation skill, it de-escalates a lot of conflict, it builds a lot of trust in the children, okay, and it actually helps calm the child's nervous system, okay? So it's the foundation of a secure connection, okay, which is one of the important tools you need in your toolkit. Okay, now your energy bucket, how do we fill that? Okay, you need to protect sleep really, really fiercely. Okay, consistent, calming bedtime routine, okay, non-negotiable. Okay, so if our kids are starting school at 8 in the morning, depending on where you're traveling, school bus, things like that, they may sometimes have to get up at 6, 6:30, or if you're lucky to be close by enough, 7, 7:15. Right, which means if we kind of count backwards, our younger kids will need about 10 hours of sleep, right? Older kids, we say 8, but ideally 9, right? So we just need to minus, what time do they actually need to be going to bed, right? Schedule some time for doing nothing, okay? As parents, it's tempting to kind of give our kids lots of like after-school enrichment, extra classes, sports, art, music, lots and lots and lots of things, okay? But please avoid over-scheduling them, okay? Because kids do need this unstructured time just sitting there doing nothing, to actually calm and regulate their nervous systems. It's a little bit like us, when we come home from work, we're really tired, we just kind of want to sit down and do nothing, right? A little bit like that, okay? And co-regulate as well, okay? When they're overwhelmed and you are calm, share that calm with them because they can feel it, okay? Take slow breaths, ground yourself, right? Because this calm that you share is contagious because they can feel it. Because if we get anxious along with them, they will escalate as well. Okay, now your food and water buckets, okay? Predictable fuel, okay? Regular, reliable meals and snack times to prevent hangry meltdowns. Sometimes when they come home from school at like 3:30, it's not quite dinner time, and then they're not doing anything you're asking them to do, check first, food bucket's probably empty. My son has this in the morning. So when he wakes up, because he sleeps about 9:30, he wakes up like 7, so his tummy is probably really, really empty. So then I'll just go, okay, I'm not going to do anything, you drink the milk first. Then we'll talk afterwards. Helps. Okay, keep water accessible. Okay, Singapore is really, really hot, very humid. Okay, have it everywhere, in the home, in the car. Okay, make it an easy default choice so they can always come, they'll just have a sip, they'll run off, and then if they're thirsty, they'll run off, they'll come, get a sip, and then they'll go off again. Okay, now with eating, okay, model, good, positive, relaxed attitudes around food. Okay, avoid pressuring them or battling at dinner time. Okay, and this one is very important. Okay, avoid modeling dieting behavior or talk in front of them. Okay, because this is one of when they're younger, sometimes this predisposes them to eating disorders when they're a little bit older. Okay, when they become teenagers, okay, these buckets will evolve, they'll change. Okay, the connection buckets become trust. Okay, power becomes really genuinely about autonomy. Okay, now this is often the biggest source of conflict in multicultural families. Okay, so your teen is navigating the individualistic culture of an international school, okay, while living within your family's cultural values. So sometimes acknowledging this tension openly, okay, can be actually really powerful, right? I know this is hard. Let's find a way that respects our family values and also your need to grow, okay, as a person. Okay, we see new needs emerge. Okay, mastery and purpose is the new bucket. Okay, which means is to feel competent at something that matters to them. Okay, so it might be things like skateboarding or video editing, Okay, now this slide is the roadmap for answering some of the most common questions I've encountered. Okay, like how do we get along with our teenagers? Or how do we boost their mental health? Okay, the answer is to shift your energy here to filling their buckets for trust and autonomy. Okay, so this is also critical for tackling issues like bullying. Okay, when someone is being bullied, their trust bucket is shattered. Okay, because it's hard to trust. Okay, so your first job would be to be their unwavering, non-judgmental ally, okay, to help them refill the trust bucket. Because when you are there, they can trust the parent. Okay, then slowly they will learn to trust others as well. Okay, how do we fill the buckets? Now, for teenagers, involve them in rule making. Okay, collaborate on rules and consequences for things like curfew, screen time. Okay, they're more likely to buy in because if they have a say in it, because you can always go, well, this is the rule you set, you didn't follow this, so this is your consequence. Okay, let natural consequences teach. Okay, if they forget their homework, for example, they might text you, I forgot to bring my homework, please bring it to me, especially if you're living nearby, right? So the temptation is, okay, I'm coming now, okay, meet me at the gate, or whatever, and then you hand them the homework, okay? Let them experience the natural consequence from the teacher, okay? You forgot to hand in your homework, there's got to be some kind of a penalty, okay? This builds real-world competence because as adults, if we forget something, we got to face the music, right? We can't, unless we have time, we can go home and get it, but again, that's the consequence, right? We're going to be late for work. Respect their space, okay? Knock before entering the room, for example, okay? Give them privacy for conversations with their friends, okay? As much as possible, okay, we do want to keep their phones private, okay? But if there are things concerning, definitely I think we're well within their means to check what's going on, so especially if there's things like cyberbullying, they can show you or we can have a look. Okay, how do we fill the trust bucket? Yeah. Okay, listen more than you talk, especially for teenagers. Okay, ask open-ended questions. How was that for you? And then just listen. Okay, so sometimes I tell parents, our kids will be very monosyllabic when they become teenagers. When they're telling us things, we do the same thing. Oh, like that. Similar things. Oh, that sounds bad. Okay, we become almost monosyllabic as well when we are listening to them. Okay, because these little few conversation fillers, I call it the it gets them to continue. Yeah? Okay, assume a good intent. Okay, so start from the belief that your teen is trying their best. Okay, they're trying hard, even when they make mistakes. Okay, and be a vault. Okay, because sometimes teens will share things with us that are confidential. Okay, so keep it confidential. Unless it's a safety issue, then that one, you have to let them know, right, thanks for telling me, okay, but I think we need to get some help for this. Okay, now the regulation bucket. One of the important things is to fill your own buckets, right? Show them how you fill your buckets. Okay, so you can say something like, I'm feeling really stressed. I'm going for a walk to clear my head. Okay? And then validate. Again, don't solve. Resist the urge to fix, especially social problems. Okay, start with, that sounds really tough. Oh, wow, that's hard. Okay, and then sit with them, because sometimes they'll just continue talking. Okay, and help them find healthy outlets for their emotions. Okay, so support their involvement in things that they want to do, like sport or music or art or whatever it is that helps them with processing their emotions better. Okay, now the fuel bucket for teenagers, okay, is important because it's a time of immense growth. So they'll go from maybe a kid at this height to taller than me. Okay, so stock the kitchen. Okay, so with adolescents, we shift from serving meals, okay, to keeping the house stocked with healthy options that, if they have time, they can prepare themselves. Like, they can make their sandwich for school for lunch the next day, for example. We don't have to do it for them. Okay, teach them life skills. Okay, learning how to cook is important, especially when they go to college, when they go overseas, or when they're living, off campus, for example. They need to learn how to cook simple, healthy meals that keeps them fueled. Okay, and frame nutrition conversations around, okay? We are fueling your brain for exams, you're fueling your brain for sports, okay? Not about weight or dieting, okay? So this is important for adolescents because this is a time where eating disorders do tend to emerge at this age. Okay, now the last new bucket, the mastery and purpose bucket, we want to celebrate effort rather than outcome. Okay, so we praise their hard work on a project, okay, regardless of the final grade. Because if we can see that if they put in the effort, typically in the long run, that pays off better than if we focus on the results. Support any sparks that they have. Okay, show a genuine interest in their passions, whether it's video games, skateboarding, theater, okay. Help them find ways to get better at it. So even though we might not agree with, video games, for example, okay, but it fills their mastery and purpose bucket when they can, I don't know, level up or beat a final boss. But to us, it's like you're wasting your time. But for them, it fills the mastery bucket, okay? Now, encourage them to contribute as well. As teenagers, okay, help them to find ways to contribute to society, like volunteering or a part-time job, okay, because it gives them a powerful sense of purpose, like, oh, this is my role in this world. Okay, I'm not just taking, I'm giving as well, because that's important for them to learn. Now, the bucket is the key for the very insightful question of the anxious, high-achieving child. Okay, to help them cope with not meeting their high standards, okay, you have to intentionally celebrate effort over outcome. Okay, praise the hours they studied. Okay, praise the effort they've put in, praise the notes that they've made. Okay, not the grade, because the grade might not be what they want. Okay, maybe they want A+, but maybe they got an A- or a B. Okay, this built their sense of mastery, okay, because it's based on what they can control, which is their work ethic, okay, which is the core of resilience. Because in college, for example, not every kid goes from like a high-achieving high school student to a straight A college student. Sometimes that's not the case. Okay, now 2 final strategies. Okay, first is, like I said, protect the sleep very relentlessly. Okay, this is not negotiable for mental health. Okay, a lot of our kids and teenagers with mental health problems in clinic, their sleep is very, very affected or is not enough. Okay, so one of the most effective rules that we have is, if possible, okay, have all the devices in like a central family area at night where they're all charging. Okay, so there are no screens in the bedroom. I know that's hard, because we use it as well a lot of times, I have to admit. Okay, and the second, which is a very, very important tool, okay, which is to model your own bucket checking. Okay, so the adolescent buckets, as adults, we can use it too. Okay, let your children hear you manage your needs, because that becomes their voice as well. Okay, it teaches them self-awareness and self-advocacy better than any lecture or any therapy session could, because they're getting that exposure 24/7 at home. Okay, if you yourself are feeling overwhelmed and kind of don't really know where to start, because there's a lot of content out there, okay, just remember to stay calm, CLAM. Okay, so C is proactively fill the connection bucket. Okay, A is using acceptance and validation as your best tool. Okay, L would be to protect lifestyle basics like sleep, nutrition. Okay, and M is managing your own buckets. Okay, this is your anchor if you're not quite sure where to start, okay, or what to do next. Okay, now, when do we know when to take action, right? Our alert levels, green, okay, would be mild temporary changes. Okay, this is green light. So monitor, use the toolkits we've had. Okay, now when changes persist and they start impacting school or impact your life at home, okay, then yellow light. Okay, this is your signal to start partnering with the school and maybe start looking out for maybe providers that might be able to support your child. Now, for any signs of crisis, okay, it's a red light. Things like if you see marks on their arm, on their tummy, on their thigh, and you don't know where it comes from. Eating patterns have changed, they become really restrictive, or they're exercising a lot, way more than they're supposed to, and not eating enough. Okay, or they're just not interested in anything at all. So they don't want to hang out with you, they don't want to hang out with their friends, they're not doing their homework, they just lock themselves up in the room a lot of the time. This is a red light. Okay, so this will be a time to act immediately and get help. okay? And prioritizing safety. So these are some numbers for mental health hotlines in Singapore. So definitely you can take a photo of it. Okay, there are numbers of all ages. Okay, there's even WhatsApp ones now, which is really good. Yeah, so you can take a photo of it. Okay. So what are our key takeaways today? Okay, first is trusting your gut. Okay, you are the expert on your child. Okay, you see them every day. So second, look beyond the obvious, look beyond the behavior for any signs of anxiety. Okay, and third, remember that connection is your superpower. Okay, use the tools we've discussed. It takes a little bit of practice. Okay, so sometimes what I tell parents to do, if we're not used to validation, for example, is to go home and write out certain phrases and sentences that you want to use, and then just keep memorizing them. And then you find that you kind of fall back on these few phrases because it works. Okay, and finally, okay, you're not alone. Okay, partnering with the school is how we move from green to yellow light effectively. Okay, ensuring that every child will feel like they are known, that they belong, and that they can thrive. Now, before we wrap up, okay, I want to address two final themes from your questions that speaks to the parent's journey. So we've talked a lot about our child's journey, but what about your own? Okay, one of you asked, okay, how do I balance being everything for my child and my own mental well-being? Okay, the answer is that, like I said, the buckets are also for you. Okay, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Okay, so you yourself need to make sure that your buckets are filled enough as well so that we can be there for our kids. You know, it's like when we fly on an aeroplane, the safety announcement always says, right, you know, put the oxygen mask on yourself before helping others. It's the same concept, okay? You cannot help others if you are incapacitated. Okay, prioritizing your own regulation and your self-care, okay, and connection is not selfish, okay? It's a prerequisite. We need this to be effective parents. Okay, now finally, a forward-thinking question, okay, about launching a child with a history of anxiety to college. Okay, so I think this is from a parent of a high schooler. Okay, now the work you do now in building their autonomy and their mastery buckets, okay, and letting them manage their own schedules, solving their own problems, smaller ones, okay, is a training ground for that moment. Okay, so your role will shift from manager, okay, to trusted consultant. Okay, and that foundation of trust is what will help them in college, because a lot of them will study, you know, overseas, really, really far away. So we can't help them immediately. Time zone differences, things like that. Okay, so we have to make sure that they have the skills to be able to cope and survive and thrive in college. Okay, so with that, okay, thank you so much for your attention, okay, and your deep commitment to your child's well-being. Okay, great honor to speak with you. Okay, if there's any questions, please let Laurie know and I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, so does anyone have any burning questions that they would like to ask today? Not all at once.
Thank you. My name is Janice. My son is in grade 9. Starting this year, he has been sleeping late. So you mentioned that I need to honor the time that he put in. But at the same time, I don't want him to sleep that late. So what should I tell him?
I think, again, it's like a natural consequence thing, right? So if they sleep late, typically they will struggle to get up on time, or they may get really drowsy in class, you know, they can't follow what teachers are teaching. Kind of link that back to, you know, we talked about you complaining about being really tired, you know, in class, for example, right? What can we do about it? Do you think you're not getting enough sleep? Right? Kind of lead them towards, rather than telling them you're not getting enough sleep, because they're just going to shut off, right? But just invite them to consider the possibility, could it be because you're not sleeping enough, right? Then your son might go, yeah, maybe. Okay, if he's falling asleep at like 12 midnight, for example, right? Okay, what time do you think you should be going to bed? Okay, so that you have enough sleep, right? So that you don't fall asleep in class and I don't get a phone call from my teacher that you are sleeping in class. Yeah. But it's hard because honestly, for adolescents, their circadian rhythm actually shifts. So actually, it's biologically natural for them to sleep later compared to kids. So this dilemma, I think, is something a lot of school systems face because schools actually start earlier than what our teenagers' bodies are ready for in the morning. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, good morning, Eric,
Hi.
grade 8 parent. So following up on the previous question, my son intellectually perfectly understands that he doesn't sleep enough. Yet getting him to sleep is sometimes, impossible. And I always say you can't beat a child to sleep.
Yeah. Not when they're older.
So what to do in that context? Because he understands it intellectually, but he doesn't act accordingly.
So again, if we go back to the buckets, right? So clearly the energy bucket is empty, okay? But there's probably another bucket that's even emptier that needs filling, which is why he does not want to go to bed, even though he knows, okay, this is bedtime, right? So again, if we kind of use that bucket system with him, ask him, okay, which one needs topping up, right? Before you can actually go to bed at a time you know that you need to go to bed. Because I'm sure if you said intellectually he already knows that he's going to bed late, means he's probably facing some kind of consequence of going to bed late in school or waking up late for sport or something like that. But there's probably another need that's more pressing that has not been met, which is why bedtime keeps getting delayed as well. So check in with him which one might be empty.
All right, thank you. Can I ask another one? You talked about how they use screens and computers, and you mentioned collaborate on projects. If they play together and they do quests on computer games together, does that qualify?
For connection, yeah. with friends, yes. Yeah, it does. So I've had clients who will be like, I said, because Singapore just had the September holidays. So, okay, what are you going to do? She said, okay, on Friday, I'm going to play, what was it? 99 something, I cannot remember. She said, I'm going to play this with my friend. Like, okay. So her whole day was dedicated to playing a game with a friend, connecting with her friend. Yeah. But other times she was studying. So I think that balance is okay.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I've got a couple of things to say. My first is a question. I have a 12-year-old turning 13 very soon, and I'm already we've had a great connection all this time. I'm already seeing a little bit of pulling away, and I want to carry on that connection. How to do that? Because he's a teenage boy, and I've got two other teenage boys that are 19 and 17, so I've been through this with them, but this one seems a little different.
Putting through as in what do you mean, sorry?
Sorry, what was your question?
When you said putting through with
I can already see that connection is not as deep. It's like we're just still doing things together.
Yeah.
But I feel something is not the same as it always was.
So I think with adolescent boys, sometimes if there's a dad at home, sometimes they gravitate more towards dad, because I think for boys, as they sort of grow into adolescence, they grow into men, so they kind of want to move towards like a role model that they can follow. It doesn't mean that mom's not important. Mom is usually there if there's like emotional stuff going on. Right, but for boys, sometimes their ability to talk about their emotions, especially as a teenager, might not be as strong, or it's not as cool to talk about it in middle school or high school. Right, so we have to recognize that part, because for girls, for example, they very freely talk about their emotion. They have like heart-to-heart talks with their friends and things like that. But for boys, when they move towards adolescence, they don't talk about these things much. It's more about doing activities. So I think the connection for boys, especially at their age, will be doing stuff with them rather than talking. Because for us, I think as mothers, we will want to talk more than we do, but actually for boys, they respond more when we do stuff with them. Because sometimes things come up when you're doing things with them.
Yeah, the alongside conversations with my older two were much more beneficial than the face-to-face. You know, like you're driving somewhere and having a conversation.
Correct.
Sorry, and the other thing I just wanted to mention, because two people talked about sleep, and I've got 19 and 17-year-old, and I was really worried about that whole sleep situation, them going to bed late and then waking up early for school. But what I found with both of them is that they don't actually end up in sleep deficit, because they come home, it's not ideal, but they'll come home and they'll take a really long nap after school. And then they're fresh, and then they will do their schoolwork. Then they'll go to bed late, which, much to my chagrin, very annoying to me.
Yep.
But that is their rhythm. And I decided to be okay with it, and it's worked out kind of okay.
Yeah. Only problem I think some parents have is that because they take such a long nap, the bedtime gets delayed. Yeah, but I think if the overall sleep hours are kind of there, it's okay.
And they definitely make up for it at the weekend.
Yes, and on the weekends, they'll sleep till lunchtime.
Hi, thank you. I'm Jing. I have two girls, 8-year-old and 11-year-old, and I have one question. My children, they have this habit of reading while they are having dinner. So we have this kind of constant struggle, and I always tell them, put away the books and then focus on eating, because I was always taught by my parents growing up that it's not good for digestion if you're, while you're eating and you are also doing other things like watching a TV. So I don't know if that's true. Like, first of all, I don't know if that really will be bad for digesting the food. So I don't know if I should enforce it, and because the one not so good thing about doing that is their dinner actually takes a long time. So they could have finished, let's say, in 20 to 30 minutes, but then the dinner ends up being an hour. So I don't know. Also, because you talk about filling the bucket of energy and food, but also you also mentioned that maybe that's the one way that they really unwind and they relax and they become calm. So I don't know actually what to do about this.
I mean, so typically it does not affect digestion. I think it's just something that our elders came up with to make us eat faster. Because when I do work with eating disorders, for example, the sufferer finds it really difficult to eat. So I will usually tell parents to put some kind of distraction in place, so whether it's reading or screen time or chatting or board games or whatever it is, to help them get through the meal. Okay, now this is for our kids with eating disorders. Okay, which also indicates to us that even if there is a distraction there at the table, it's fine as long as they finish their meal. Now, I think what you can do with, especially with the 11-year-old, is to let her know, hey, which of their buckets are you filling when you're reading while we're eating at the same time, right? Because we would like to talk with you as well, to find out about your day, So could we see if we can maybe have a bit of a compromise, right? I need you to finish your dinner within half an hour, for example, okay? And you're free to do that. If you're reading, you need to finish within half an hour. If you can't finish within half an hour, then we got to talk about, how we can help you finish faster, right? Does it mean that we might have to only have 15 minutes of reading or 10 minutes of reading before then you can concentrate on your food? Because sometimes what happens is they'll read and they'll get very, very engrossed and they stop eating. Yeah, and then we go, next spoon, faster, and then it's frustrating for us because then we're sitting there for 1 hour when we could be, doing the dishes or taking the dog out for a walk or something like that. Yeah, and sometimes we're helping them realize that, it can be taking a time away from doing other things as well, like play.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Hi there. I have a newly minted 13-year-old.
Oh.
Wonderful.
Congrats.
Thanks. She's, we just moved from the US and she's still in a lot of iMessage chat groups from back home.
Yeah.
And I feel like she's always in a turmoil and battle with a lot of these kids because she's very righteous. Like if anyone is mean to anyone, she wants to, be that justice person to say that's, don't bully my friend. And she also, when she vents to me, I try to offer her solutions, and then she'll get upset at me for offering a solution. And she's like, I just want you to tell me it's going to be okay. I don't need to hear solutions. So I just feel very stuck when I hear that because I'm like, I'm literally giving you an actionable item.
Yep.
Right? You can literally do this to make things better,
Yeah.
but she doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, so I think it kind of goes back to that first question where they come to you, right? Is you ask, okay, do you need me to listen, or do you need help with something, right? Because as 13-year-olds, especially girls, when they come to you, it's usually, Mom, do you know what happened today? It's they just want to unload, yeah. So they don't really want to hear the actionable, even though it actually does work. Okay, they kind of, as teenagers, they want to figure things out themselves, right? Is developmentally, that's just what they want to do. And it does make things very hard for parents because we have the solution. It's like, if you just listen to me, your life is going to be so much better. But that's not how teenage brains work. Yeah, so I think it's just something we have to kind of, adjust to, and maybe ask that question first. And if she goes, yeah, I want you to listen to me, then you go, okay. Then maybe at the end you can go, okay, sounds like this, validation. Do you want to hear something that I think might work? Yeah, maybe like that. Rather than this is what's going to work, do you want to hear something I think might work? You can go and try.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a kindergartner and a third grader, so kind of on the other end of the spectrum. I loved your cookie example because I think that happens a lot
works,
in our
yeah.
house.
It happens, yes.
I guess my question is for my kindergartner, right, in that cookie example, right, if I've gotten down on his level, I've said, wow, you're really mad, and he still has like his tantrum, right?
Yeah.
I also kind of want to balance that with helping him develop some self-control of his emotions. Like, he can feel them, right? But
Yeah.
he can't keep having fits when he is 10, right? So I'm curious, what is your recommendation around that, helping kids develop that self-control while also acknowledging the feelings when they're having really big emotions?
So usually at that age, kindergartners, I would say your kid's about 4 or 5, I guess.
6,
Right,
but yeah, he
6.
just turned 6.
Okay, yeah, so typically our kids don't start learning self-control, especially for the emotions, until they're about, I say 8 until about 10. So younger than that, a lot of the times our kids depend on us to regulate for them. But what we can do is we can plant that seed of awareness, right? So like you said, you're doing really well and like, oh, you're so mad because your cookie broke in half, right? That feels really unfair, or you're angry at the cookie, for example, maybe you don't want to eat it anymore, right? So they kind of depend on us for that. And sometimes what happens is when their emotions get really overwhelming, sometimes deep pressure, I find deep pressure helps. So like, holding them, cuddling and just like doing nothing. And then you can do like, maybe a little rocking or a patting, right? It just helps calm the nervous system down until the brain kind of turns on, and then they're receptive to what you say. Because when they're really dysregulated, they can't hear anything you say, even though we're trying to calm them down. Just like, no, the cookie broke. I don't like it. I don't want a cookie anymore. I don't want anything in the house. My son said that the other day. I hate everything at home. Okay. And I was like, okay, what about me? Right? They go, no, but I want you. And I'm like, but I live in a home. So they don't make sense when they're angry.
Right.
Yeah. So, deep pressure, holding them, rocking, right? Until after they're calm, then you can talk to them about it a little bit more. Yeah. But then you can also talk about things like strategies. Like just now you're really angry, right? Next time, you can use your words and tell mommy, oh, I'm very angry, mommy. Right? That actually starts that seed of self-control, because for self-control, they need to be aware of what they're feeling.
Got it. Thank
Then
you.
when they're older, you can start teaching strategies like breathing or stomping your feet, or
Okay.
tearing paper.
Great. Thank you.
I think there was one there. Yeah, the lady in the pink.
Getting in a workout.
Hi. I actually have two questions, but I'll start with my first one. You had a slide before the calm where you said that, you were feeling a little irritable, and so you were going to fill your food bucket first. What is the difference? I mean, I understand being hangry, but what is the difference between filling your food bucket because you're irritable and being an emotional eater?
I mean, I think sometimes it's timing as well. If it's like kind of after school, and it always happens after school, then chances are, give them a little bit of food and see if the irritability eases, right? If it doesn't, then maybe there's like a mood issue going on. But if you see the filling the food bucket and then they're kind of not able to tell you that they're hungry or they're full, right? But if you notice like this pattern becomes very persistent, then you might ask them, are you actually physically hungry because we just had dinner an hour ago, right? Or you're feeling stressed. That's why you're reaching out for the snacks or the cookies or whatever. Yeah. But yes, it's a good point to know. Again, persistent change in baseline. But also kind of looking at the timings as well, because it can be tricky.
Yeah. That also kind of leads me to my second question where you said, the change, right? In the first slide, you talked about, kids who kind of hang on to your leg before trying to go into anywhere or see anything. And, you said that as a change, like if that's a change in behavior from a usually outgoing child to someone who just suddenly hangs on to your leg.
Yeah.
But what happens if what is your opinion if your child is just generally like that? Just generally will always hang on to your leg before going,
To a new thing.
joining anything, even if it's with people that she knows.
So
My
this-
daughter is 7 for background.
Okay, so this one I think is more your child's temperament and their personality. So some children are naturally more cautious, right? So they will cling onto your leg. They will be more cautious about trying new things. They don't really like trying new things, and they will only try new things after knowing that, that they're safe, right? So I think for children like that, because my son's actually like that as well, it's actually helping them feel safe, and then just being there until they feel safe enough to go and try it.
Are there any tools you can suggest to help them feel safe?
So help them to tune into their buckets as well. Like at 7, you can actually start introducing the buckets to them already. Just go, okay, maybe you're not feeling so safe right now, right? Or if you're a little worried, right? Can you tell mommy, what are you worried about? Right? They may go, oh, I worry about doing things wrong, or that I don't know how to do this, right? Because when they're able to tell you what they're thinking of or what they're worried about, then we can help them, we can support them through it. Because typically these children, they tend to be worriers as well. There are lots of things going up here, it just doesn't come out.
That's true. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah.
So I have a almost 15-year-old girl, and my question is around Snapchat,
Okay.
the social media usage. I think around this age is when they want to be connected all the time on, things like apps like Snapchat. And as a parent, we are trying to put restriction, time limit restriction, all of that. But I sense frustration from her where the comparison, like my friends have it 24 hours open and you give me only 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And, so how, as a parent, what is the right balance? We were talking about connection bucket and being there in person and spending time in person, but there's a lot of, feels like the evolution right now, this teenage age where they want to be online and feel connected, being there online. So how do we create that balance? What is the right thing to do? as parents?
So I think for them, I mean, going back to the if and the why, right? So yes, they're connecting on Snapchat with their friends, right? But then we can also have a discussion with them if, for example, if they're on Snapchat all the time, you know, you are filling your connection bucket, for example. Okay. However, while filling that connection bucket, are there times where you are just hanging out there because you're escaping something, because it can change, right? If they are there for 6 hours on Snapchat, for example, chances are they're not only filling the connection bucket. At some point, it became numbing or escaping or avoiding homework, for example, right? It's helping them to realize that, okay, when did it turn into an avoidance or a numbing or escaping from something? And then, for example, if it's affecting their homework, for example, then we can let them know as well, like, I don't mind you being on Snapchat, right? Because you want to hang out with your friends, and that's fine. However, I still need you to get your homework done because that's your responsibility as a student, right? You need to get your stuff done. Just like mom and dad, we need to work. We need to make sure that, you know, we have food on the table, you know, get your sports done, make sure you can go to sport and things like that. Your responsibility as a student, which means you need to get your homework done. You need to get your bag packed. You know, you need to get your uniform ready, you know, or your lunch ready, for example, right? And if these things are not done, right, then perhaps are you spending too much time online with your friends such that you're ignoring the stuff that you need to do, right? So again, invite that discussion with teenagers, because I think as parents, it's very tempting for us to just tell them like, this is affecting your life, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, when we do that, the wall just goes, and then we cannot get through to them anymore. Yeah.
Okay, here, then there. Okay.
Hello. I have a 12-year-old daughter. When I ask her when she gets back from school, how's your day today? She always answers either terrible or boring most of the time. I'm wondering what should I do when she gave me that answer? Like, should I continue the conversation or I'm just not sure, is something really going on at school or just she really doesn't like school, or is that normal for that age?
Yes, absolutely normal. Like I said, they become very monosyllabic at
But
12.
it's like
for
most
girls,
of the time,
earlier.
like 90% of the time. Is
Yeah.
it really terrible? Some start questioning. Should I talk to the teacher, or that's just that, you know, not sure what to do is that.
Okay, so check first when she comes home from school, food bucket empty or not, right? So sometimes they are quite depleted, so they'll use one word because they're just too hungry to say anything, right? So once they're filled up a little bit more, check with them. Just now you told me that school was terrible, right? Can you tell me more about it? Right? What was terrible about school, or what's boring about school, right? You kind of need to get details from them, right? Like when I have my adolescents in clinic telling me, so I'll go, how are you? Okay. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't help me, right? Tell me more, right? Okay, I don't know what okay means, right? You need to tell me what okay is, right? So it can be, we can use like a structure. So something like, okay, can you tell me 3 things that went well today in school, right? What about 2 things that didn't go so well in school? I tend to use 3 positives and maybe 1 to 2 negatives, because for children who are a bit more predisposed to anxiety or negative thinking, if you ask them like 3 positives and 3 negatives, the 3 negatives will take up like half an hour, and then the 3 positives are like 2 minutes, right? So I kind of want to help them, you know, see that, to see more positives in the world, but of course there's always a balance of, you know, yes, there's bad stuff happening as well. Yeah, so you can have like a structure.
So it is important to keep talking to them when they give you that answer.
Yes, because sometimes, like say, especially for girls, if they're telling you that school is boring, sometimes it can be a flag that maybe they're not stimulated enough in class, right? Or maybe the child might potentially be, you know, gifted or advanced, and then that, you know, the classroom material is just too boring at that grade level. And, you know, you might then need to discuss with the school support team, for example, does she need an IEP in place for advanced, you know, material, for example, that she does not feel bored in school. Yeah, because a lot of times with brighter kids, they can get bored in school because the material is not stimulating enough.
Okay. She also shows, like, 2 days or 3 days before they have some summative test, she will keep not complaining, talk to me or ask me or telling me, oh, I'm going to not doing too well for that test. I'm getting nervous. Keep doing that. In this situation, what can I do to release that stress or help her or anything else?
So I guess check in with her as well, like, okay, you're worried about, you're not going to do well in that test, right? Then kind of do a little bit like a detective thinking kind of thing, right? Well, give me the evidence that you're not going to do well in the test, right? If they're not able to come up with it, because that's the anxiety being on all the time, once they're a bit calmer, we get them to list it out, because that kind of activates the more logical part of the brain, right? Okay, you've done your preparation, you've done lots of practice, okay? And sometimes we also tell our children that, if you actually feel really nervous during a test, it's actually a self-fulfilling cycle, right? Because when you feel nervous, sometimes during tests you might blank out. Then you might actually really not do well as you wanted, right? So it's also helping her with things like strategies, like, making sure she has enough sleep the night before, right? Making sure she's fueled enough, right? And then like simple breathing strategies or, little fidgets, if the school allows her to, just to kind of get that nervous energy out. And then once she kind of feels a bit more settled, then she can proceed with the test, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your sharing today. And I have a 6 turning 7-year-old boy in grade 1, and I am the one who raised the question about how to different so energetic to the ADHD. Because recently I just heard about that ADHD, and that made me realize maybe he is like that one. So I asked GPT about how to deal with an ADHD in detail suggestions. I didn't raise any questions to it, but all the solutions the GPT gave to me, it is like exactly what I need to put into schedule. So for this chat about the buckets, I check, because mostly it seems like too much over, like 120% food. So my boy is like, he is caring, he seems like doing sports and so much social to the friends, but it is like he can burn up whoever he play together to be like a group that care about nothing, the environment all around. Like when going out, they even can burn up like a 9-year-old sister, play together like they are going back to 2 years old, like so noisy and touching whatever, running wherever. You just follow and let them know, here, this is a public places. I'm tired of like always telling them and stopping them, but to me it is like too much over energetic always. And if you forbidding him to do that much, he will be so much depressed and like all empty buckets. So I really don't know if it is really working in this age out, because sometimes I see whoever he play together, they turn into like that way. So sometimes I think it's really normal, even though the elders will be this way. But I really don't know if it is going on well, because these days, like the teacher tell us, some of them are in the special charts for controlling their performance in the classroom. That also happens.
Okay, so it's happening in the classroom as well.
Yeah, like he can learn up whatever, and he play with the close friend who speak the same language, and they are like playing the not awareness of others like that.
Oh, okay. I mean, like I said, I think with ADHD we need to look at the behavior happening across different settings, right? So if it's happening at home, outside, in school, So typically for diagnostic criteria for ADHD is 2 or more settings. So that criteria has already been met, right? It's 3 settings where you see this behavior where he's not able to regulate when other people can, or despite you telling him, you know, you need to sit down, but he's walking around in class or he's disturbing his friends and things like that. That might not be just that he's energetic, it could potentially be neurodivergence. So I would say perhaps for your child, it might be helpful to seek like professional help to see whether he really is, so that, you know, we can kind of do like an in-depth comprehensive assessment on whether he really has potentially ADHD or something else going on as well.
Yeah, but it almost happens like when he is with someone. But if he's alone like that, he will be so normal.
Yeah, so that usually happens. So with ADHD, it does not mean that they cannot focus across all settings, right? There are times where individuals with ADHD have what we call hyperfocus. So usually when something interesting like computer games or iPad or something that they're really interested in, like that Wiggles, or something that's non-screen, like maybe reading or drawing, for example, right? They can be really, really, really focused, right? But when it comes to things that are a little bit more mundane, a bit more boring, like schoolwork, sitting down in class, or some extra class or something like that, then the focus is very, very varied. Or you get a lot of comments from teachers or coaches that, you know, they're not focusing as well, or they're not paying attention, or they're daydreaming in class or something like that. Yeah, then there might be, I guess, a couple of red flags that you have already that might signal, okay, maybe I should talk to someone about this.
Thank you.
Back there.
Okay, we have time for maybe 2 more.
Hello.
Hi.
I have a second grader and a 5th grader. Both have ADHD and they both take medication for it. My youngest one, he's 7. In relation to the food bucket and building a healthy relationship around food, his ADHD medication decreases his appetite and his desire to eat.
Yeah.
We've talked to him and explained in ways that he can understand. Your medicine is making it feel like you don't need to eat. Your body still needs to eat. We still need to make sure you're healthy.
Yeah.
But the problem we're running into is during meal times. It's food that he likes. It's not like a food aversion or anything like that. But when he sits down to eat, it's slow to not, like, because he doesn't have that desire to eat. So we're constantly reminding, hey, please eat your food. Hey, please eat your food. Which then frustrates him that we're constantly getting after him.
Yeah.
In the evenings for dinner time, it's not such an issue because he can take longer and still be okay.
Yeah.
In the mornings during the week, it's more rushed because we're very scheduled for him to catch the bus.
Yeah.
So then it's a lot more frustration on his end, frustration on our end. Hey, you need to eat your breakfast, him not wanting to eat. Do you have any suggestion on how to kind of like mediate that or resolve that, where we still want to build that healthy relationship with food and not fight with him over it, but his medication is stopping that desire?
Does he take his medication before or after breakfast?
Right before breakfast. So
Okay.
it shouldn't be in effect.
I would suggest taking medication after breakfast.
Okay.
That's usually what the doctors will recommend that you do, because yes, it's true, a lot of medications like Ritalin or Concerta or whatever, they do suppress the appetite. So the doctors usually say, for the morning dose, eat breakfast first, then give them the medication. Yeah, so maybe you can try that. But then also, I think for a lot of these kids, it's true, they don't feel very hungry, and sometimes they just want to play, so they will ignore hunger. So what we do sometimes is that, again, you have explained it to him, but you can kind of go like, okay, you still need to fuel your body so that you can play and learn, right? So, but you don't feel hungry, right? So that makes it difficult for you to understand in your body that it's time to eat, right? So what we might have to do is to eat on a schedule. So it's a bit like a timetable, like in school.
Do you think like setting a timer or something?
You can set a timer. You can gamify it. Like, okay, how many carrots can you eat today, right? Because vegetables are usually a tough one for a lot of our kids, right? Okay, how many carrots can you eat today? I can do 5. Okay, all right. How quickly can you do 5? So kids with ADHD, they respond very well to like these dopamine hits. So we gamify it, or make it a challenge, like can you eat faster than daddy or mommy? Okay, then they might respond a little bit more, especially for what we call food challenges. So food that they usually have a bit more difficulty with, we try to make it a game, right? So, or we can make it like, okay, you want your carrots, right, in your pasta, do you want to make it a smiley face first? Then, okay, do you want to eat the eyes first? Do you want to eat the mouth first or the nose or something like that? So, but I think it demands a bit of creativity on our part as well. But I think once they learn and they get used to like eating on that schedule, things become a little bit easier. But definitely talk to his doctor as well if the medication is suppressing his appetite so much that he's not growing, and putting on weight. Because at 7, they do need to be putting on weight and growing as well. So definitely talk to the doctor as well to see if either the medication can be changed or the dose needs to be adjusted. Because sometimes it can be too high as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, here.
Thank you. As a mom to teen boys, I sometimes struggle with the right terminology or the right way to approach conversations like this. And I'll give you an example. When you talk about filling buckets, it's usually met with, they can be a bit skeptical or just make fun of it and say, oh, Mom, you've read another book. Okay, tell us about it, right? Yeah. So what would be the right terminology that you use when you're talking to a very mature teen?
That's a very skeptical one,
what bucket is empty? Because I know that I cannot approach it that way. I have to approach it differently.
Yeah. So I think for teenagers, if they're not used to the bucket system yet, they're gonna be like, Mom, it's true, you read another book, or did you talk to ChatGPT, whatever it is, right? So I think for teenagers like that, I think we can just ask them directly, right? Hungry? Thirsty? Need sleep? Just ask them directly which is the need, then okay, this is the bucket that's empty, right? Or need time to yourself? Or homework not done, stressed? Yeah, so again, we can be more direct with teenagers. We don't have to use the buckets. Again, like I said, the buckets, a lot of it's for us to just understand their behavior and what they need. Because yes, teenagers, they don't like talking, right? So it makes it very hard for us sometimes, like, okay, what do you need? I can help you meet that need, but you need to tell me, but they're not, especially for boys, they're not the best talkers. They go from being really chatty as a kid, and then suddenly they just stop talking as a teenager, right? So then it makes it hard. But sometimes it's like, okay, do you need time to decompress right now, right? Or do you need just some time to yourself? Then I'll come in and ask you in half an hour's time, do you need food or whatever it is? Yeah, just ask them what they need. They usually can tell you.
So being direct. Thank you.
Okay, one more. Okay.
Hi, I actually have a question around navigating the clinical landscape here in Singapore. I struggle with it a lot because I feel like there's the cultural differences, and at the same time, it's everywhere I go to find somebody to talk to for my child's needs, it's really a stab in the dark. You go to a clinic, you find somebody to talk to, that person will see your child for a couple of weeks, and then you come to a decision on whether it's working out or not. Yeah. And if not, many dollars and many hours later, you pivot and you go find, and this is just an endless sort of, tunnel that you kind of go down. Yeah. And then if you have more than one child with a need, it ends up being incredibly, overwhelming. Is there a way to do this properly? Is there, is there a handbook, or is there a place that you guys go to as practitioners to, maybe showcase what your focus is or how you deal with, issues that families come to you to discuss or talk about? I don't know. It's just, I want to hear your perspective.
I guess not quite a handbook. Definitely, I think depending on the practice, I think sometimes what parents will do is they will find a practitioner that also comes from a similar cultural background as them, because sometimes that's actually quite a good starting point, because there is an understanding of how that culture works as well, right? But as practitioners, we do need to be mindful of different cultures as well. But sometimes it means that our understanding of that particular culture might be limited, which is why then we would have to depend on the parent to educate us on, what are the family values, and then what we can work on within that to enable us to support the child who's struggling with whatever the struggles are. Yeah, so I would say if the understanding cultural bit is difficult, perhaps find a practice where practitioners share a similar cultural background as well. And actually, when you are making the inquiry to the front desk of the clinic, just state, in your inquiry as well that, I do need a clinician that understands, this particular culture, because we do have queries like that as well.
Yeah, thank you. But so how much time should you invest in somebody before deciding whether or not it's worth going further or moving on? And I ask you this also because sometimes, I'll ask my child, I'm like, how was the session? Because, we don't join, right, if they're older. And so I say, how was it today? What did you do? And they obviously don't have much to say other than it was good.
Yeah.
And then when sometimes, I'll connect with the therapist, yeah, and she'll say, oh, we had a great session today, and then at home when my child is struggling, I'll ask him or her, oh, okay, well, what did you learn during your sessions? I haven't seen you apply any of it, can you tell mommy, how can I help you here? Yeah. And so, but obviously we let the child go on for months, right? And are we expected to see something in return, or is this just the child processing internally on his or her own?
Okay, so I think it depends on, I guess, the depth of the child's struggles, right? So typically for kind of mildish struggles, we would say maybe about 8 to 10 sessions would be adequate to see some small change. For larger problems, I would say maybe up to 20 and above, before we can see small changes. For example, I used to have a girl with bulimia. She was about 16 years old. It took her 16 sessions before she could make a small change in her diet. But even before that, her dad was asking, can we move to 2 weekly sessions, so on and so forth. But the girl was like, no, I want to come, right? So it took her 16 sessions weekly before a small change was made. Yeah, so the process takes time because it takes time for them to sort of internalize what we talk about as well. Because for children, the learning pace is a little bit slower than adults. So for us, in therapy, for example, if we tell an adult, maybe you can try this at home, they can maybe apply it quite quickly. Then maybe we might be able to see changes in 2 or 3 weeks. But for children, sometimes, the change that you want to see might take a couple of months before something small happens. So sometimes, yes, that can be very frustrating for parents because you're kind of I'm shelling out, lots of money, and then this tiny little change, what's going on, right? But I think also for a child and a therapist, the fit is very important, right? The child needs to feel comfortable, talking to this person as well. So I think maybe one of the major flags, for most cases, not all, is if the child comes home and says, I can't talk to this person, right? Very hard to talk to this person. Or in teenager, I cannot vibe with this person, right? Then there might be time to consider maybe a change. But if the child feels comfortable, that's important because a lot of the time the change happens with that what we call a therapeutic relationship that the therapist has with the child. That is actually the one that affects the changes in the long term.
Thank you very much. We do have a feedback form. If you are so inclined, we invite you to provide us with feedback on this session so that we can continue to provide you valuable experiences.
Trying the app as well. The translator app.
Oh, it does work. It comes on after a while.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Just a little thank you from the PTA because you've given your time.
Thank you so much.
Right. I'll explain it to you after.
The school flag.
Yep, good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. And if you have more feedback on other sessions you might want, please reach out to Guzzle, who's our parent engagement lead for the school. Thank you.